Stephen Holmes was just 14, but in 1978 he was wise enough to the ways of the street, even in a big city like London. It was 2 days before New Year's Eve, and Holmes was in a good mood as he headed home after seeing a rock band. But when he stopped at the Cricklewood Arms in northwest London for a drink, he made a fatal mistake. His first impressions of Dennis Andrew Nilsen were of a kind and considerate man who was looking for company. Nilsen had been drinking, and, initially at least, was the kind of companion that made Holmes feel comfortable. As drinks were consumed and the night became hazy, it was easy for Nilsen to convince the teenager to join him back at his ground floor flat at 195 Melrose Avenue, Cricklewood. Holmes' loose assessment of his new friend would cost him his life. After more drinking, the pair went to bed and fell into a heavy sleep. When Nilsen woke in the morning, he was struck by an unshakable feeling that Holmes, who he believed to be 17 years old, would have no interest in staying with a man some 20 years his senior to celebrate New Year. In fact, he was convinced he would not see the boy again, so he hatched a depraved plan that was executed with cold brutality. Nilsen climbed on top of the sleeping boy and began to strangle his victim with a necktie. Holmes struggled but was unable to hold off his attacker and fell into unconsciousness. The young boy, who clung to the faintest hint of life, was then drowned in a bucket of water. Dennis Nilsen had committed murder for the first time. Over the next 5 years, he would claim more than a dozen victims.
Here we've got Nilsen, an undernourished, not particularly attractive guy who's come into contact with gays. He's got homosexual leanings himself. He realizes he can control them and manipulate them because he's a police officer, or was a police officer. And then when he leaves the force, he's still got that I was an ex-policeman credibility. So he will see a young boy that he likes. He will want to possess that lad. He will go up to him, probably offer him a meal or a drink and say, look, you know, I used to be a policeman, I'm a social worker, I can help you, and lure that person back to his flat, a bit like Jeffrey Dahmer did in many cases, a Milwaukee killer. And then his sexual emotions will start to become aroused, where it comes a point where he's uncontrollable. And if I were in Dennis Nilsen's head, which I don't really want to be, I would say sometimes the lad said, look, I've got to go now. But Nilsen wants to keep them. So he gets them drunk, and they feel they're going and drifting off, and they're drunk, and that's when he garrots them, and that's when he has sex with them.
But ultimately, Dennis Nilsen's motivation was not sex, but murder by strangulation, which was followed by a bizarre ritual that eventually led to the dismemberment and attempted disposal of his victims.
He washes the bodies and cleans them, and perhaps sits them next to him to watch the television for a few hours until things start to smell a bit, and then he's got to get rid of them. Now, he might chop them up and flush them down the toilet, which he did, which led to his undoing. He might put them under floorboards, he might put them in bin bags in his wardrobe.
The monster in Dennis Nilsen took 33 years to emerge. Born in 1945 in the fishing harbour town of Fraserburgh, Scotland, Nilsen's childhood was far from idyllic. His father, Olaf, a Norwegian serviceman, married Elizabeth White, a devout Catholic, in May 1942. But 7 years later, the marriage fell apart. Nilsen's grandfather, Andrew White, a fisherman, took on the paternal responsibilities, and Nilsen adored him. The comforting presence of his grandfather was taken away less than a month before Nilsen's 6th birthday, when White had a heart attack at sea and died. At his funeral, Nilsen was taken to view his beloved grandfather's corpse. It was the catalyst for withdrawal.
The overwhelming influence in Dennis Nilsen's life was loneliness. He was lonely from a child. His father was only around the first year or two, then left. His grandfather, who he adored, drowned at sea at 6 years old. So he was brought up by his mother, but he had no male influences at all. And he used to have these very dark fantasies. He used to fantasize that he was dead. He would dress himself up as a corpse, and that would be the way that he would play childhood games, like you and I would go out and play football and this sort of thing. He would pretend to be a corpse, which is not normal.
By the time he was 14, he joined the cadet force, and the following year was enlisted in the Army. He joined the Army Catering Corps. Nilsen was assigned to the 1st Battalion Royal Fusiliers in Osnabrück, Germany. It was here where he started to drink excessively, and after a drunken night with a local German youth, his sexual fantasies took on an even more twisted bent. His initial thoughts of having sex with a controlled passive partner gave way to fantasies of companions who were unconscious or even dead. In 1967, Nilsen was deployed to Yemen, where military tensions created an atmosphere of fear. In one particularly fraught encounter, Nilsen was kidnapped by a taxi driver, but fought back and severely beat his assailant before locking him in the boot of the car. Nilsen had his first sexual experience with a woman in Berlin, where he paid to sleep with a prostitute, but later described the act as depressing. In 1972, he left the Army and returned home to Scotland. An argument with his brother Olaf Jr. after they'd watched a documentary about male homosexuality brought a sudden end to their already strained relationship, and Nilsen moved to London. Missing the camaraderie of the Army, Nilsen became a police officer, and in April 1973 was posted to Willesden Green in northwest London. Around this time, he started to couple his heavy drinking with casual sexual liaisons with men he encountered in London pubs. It wasn't long before the conflict between his personal and professional lives led him to leave the police force. And after working as a security guard, he became a civil servant at a job center. In November 1975, he began a relationship with David Galishan, and the pair moved into the ground floor flat at 195 Melrose Avenue. Nilsen's negotiation with the landlord for exclusive use of the adjacent garden would become critical in the disposal of the bodies he would dismember over 3 gruesome years in Cricklewood. The end of his relationship with Galishan in May 1977 was the spark that sent Nilsen over the edge.
It completely devastated Dennis Nilsen. He didn't like the fact his partner left him. So he used to go and trawl the gay bars around London looking for new partners, and every time they came back to his place, they'd all get drunk and everything, and they left. He used to get very, very angry. And he formulated in his own mind the only way he could keep people with him was to kill them. So one night when they were all drunk and one of his visitations wanted to leave, Dennis decided, "You're not leaving," so he strangled him. And having strangled him, he realised, 1, he actually enjoyed doing it, and 2, he now had complete control of the body that was never ever going to never going to leave him again. So what he'd then do was he'd strip the body off, he'd go and wash the body, and he'd actually redress it again, and he'd leave it in the front room and he'd start talking to the body as if it was a real person, you know? Now, it gets even more bizarre, because when he used to go to bed, he would actually then change the body, put bedclothes on, and he'd take the body to bed, and he never ever admitted what he used to do, but clearly there's some sort of a necrophiliac influence there going on within Nilsen's mind. And in the morning, he'd bring the body back down again, change it for daytime, leave it in the front room, and he'd go to work, and he'd have a normal day's work, and everyone said at work, he was in the civil service then, he appeared to be quite normal. Then he'd go home at night and he'd start talking to the body again, because it could never ever go away. And bedtime would come and he'd put the body back in bed and sleep with it again. It's just bizarre.
After making Stephen Holmes his first victim in December 1978, Nilsen stored the body under the floorboards at Melrose Avenue for 8 months. In August the following year, he built a garden bonfire that he used to incinerate the remains, placing a tire on top to mask the putrid smell of burning flesh. The attempted murder of Andrew Ho in October 1979 should have raised suspicion, but when the Hong Kong student decided not to press charges, the incident was all but forgotten. 2 months later, Canadian student Kenneth Ockenden was dead after getting drunk on rum with Nilsen before the killer strangled him with a cord from a set of headphones. Ockenden's body was wrapped in plastic and hidden under the floorboards. On several occasions, Nilsen returned to the body, removing it from the plastic and seating it beside him on the settee as he watched TV. Over the next 3 years, he would follow a gruesome pattern.
There's clearly something incredibly sick going on in his mind with all of this. He would say to get rid of a body, he would have to get blinding drunk. He'd go and buy like a tarpaulin from the hardware shop. He'd get the most decomposed one out first. He'd cut the whole thing up. He had a problem with the head, because the head being the biggest part. So he used to decapitate the bodies, put the head in a pot, and he would boil the head for about 24 hours till he could strip all the flesh off, flush it down the toilet, crush the bones, and he would burn the rest out in the garden before. So he would eventually get rid of the bodies from under the floorboards. But the neighbours thought he was wonderful because he would mix it up with all the garden rubbish and waste, saying, look at that lovely man over there, look how clean his garden is, look at what he's doing. And he would light bonfires all round, so he would mix up human bones, human remains, with logs, bushes and garden waste. And the neighbours thought he was just this very clean and tidy man who was a pleasure to live close by because he had a lovely clean garden.
In May 1980, Nilsen killed 16-year-old Martin Duffy at Melrose Avenue, using a ligature to strangle the teenager. After drowning him in the kitchen sink, Nilsen bathed with the lifeless body before storing him under the floorboards. Over the next 5 months, Nilsen entered a frenzied killing period, taking 5 more victims, although only 26-year-old William David Sutherland was ever identified.
Of course, that couldn't go on forever. He had to get rid of them. So he worked out with his skills from the Army Catering Corps, the only way I can permanently get rid of them is to get them out, dismember them, and either burn them, flush them away, or cook them and just dispose of it. And that's exactly what he used to do.
After his back garden bonfire went out, Nilsen raked through the ashes for bones that he smashed and threw away in his household rubbish. But he was addicted to killing, and just a month later, in January 1981, he murdered again. By April, he'd killed twice more, and in September 1981, he claimed the last of his victims at Melrose Avenue. He strangled Malcolm Barlow just a day after assisting the 23-year-old epileptic in getting to hospital. When Nilsen's landlord decided to renovate the ground floor flat, Nilsen was initially reluctant before accepting an offer of £1,000 to move out. The day before he left, he constructed another bonfire, which was used to destroy the remains of another 5 dismembered victims. Nilsen moved to Cranley Gardens in Muswell Hill, North London. In his attic flat, Nilsen's appetite for murder quickly took hold again, although his attempt to kill Carl Stoder was aborted, with Nilsen believing the 21-year-old was dead. Realizing Stoder was hanging to life, Nilsen's twisted mindset set about reviving him. When Stoder regained consciousness, Nilsen convinced him he had strangled himself on the zip of a sleeping bag and that Nilsen had placed him in a cold bath to revive him. John Howlett, Graham Allen, and Stephen Sinclair, Nilsen's final victim in January 1983, were not so lucky. They were murdered, dissected on the kitchen floor, and wrapped in plastic bags that were hidden in the flat. But with no floorboards underfoot in his new attic space and no immediate access to a garden, disposing of the bodies was far more difficult than at Melrose Avenue. So he resorted to flushing the remains away.
And that's what really caused the problem, because you can flush away small pieces of bone, you can crush them up, but when you think of the human body, there's a huge amount of bone. Of course, he'd still boil the heads. He'd boil the heads on absolutely every body, so you could crush down the skull and flush it down the toilet. But eventually, it blocked all the plumbing up. And the plumber was called and lifted the sewer cap and, of course, nearly knocked his head off with the smell and what he found down there.
The police were called to investigate the material found in a block sewer, and the true horror of Nilsen's life was laid bare. When they entered Nilsen's attic flat, they were overcome by the odor of rotting flesh. They would later find human remains in plastic bags in a wardrobe and other body parts in a tea chest in the living room.
He made a full and frank confession. Over several days, he was actually extremely helpful. He took the officers back to the old house. He even drew them a great big map of where the bonfires had been, helped them with the identities of the people he knew. He thought he'd killed about 15 or so.
Charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder, Nilsen's trial started in October 1983. And citing diminished responsibility, he pleaded not guilty to all charges. Following testimony from psychiatrists on both sides of the legal argument, the judge advised the jury to consider that a mind can be evil without being abnormal. The jury returned a majority verdict finding Nilsen guilty of all 6 counts of murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison.
Now, call me old-fashioned, but if somebody sleeps with the corpses at night, comes down in the morning, puts the kettle on for a cup of tea and have a bit of toast, goes to check the human head they've had boiling all night because they want to strip the flesh off of it, and turns the gas tap down a little bit to finish the job, has breakfast, right? Goes upstairs, gets the corpse out of bed, brings it downstairs, changes it into its day attire, and then goes to work. Well, if that's not a form of insanity, then I'm on the wrong planet, and I need the first intergalactic rocket to take me to a universe that I do understand.
Dennis Nilsen died May 12, 2018, at HM Prison, Full Sutton, near York. He was 72. Dallas, Texas. A city that became synonymous with blood spilt by gunfire when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in his open-top limousine in 1963. 30 years later, Dallas would be terrorized by gunfire once again. This time, one man would embark on an impulsive rampage of murder, leaving 5 dead in a single night. Jason January was the assistant district attorney for Dallas County. In 1995, he began the prosecution against Juan Rodriguez Chavez for capital murder.
I actually had many cases over the years where multiple people had been killed by the person I was prosecuting. I would say Chavez had killed the most people of the people I ever prosecuted. He went on sprees, where he'd killed 5 in a night, that type of thing. But you rack up 12 terrible murders, then you're a serial killer.
Juan Chavez was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana in April 1968. When he was 3 months old, his family moved to the hard-up area of West Dallas. His father, a construction worker, and his mother remained married for 35 years. Chavez became the 10th child of 19 children. In contrast to his siblings, most of whom finished school, held down a job, and got married, Chavez dropped out of school after the 9th grade. He progressed through his teenage years without incident. But that trajectory dramatically changed when he was 17 years old. Chavez's neighbor, Vicente Mendoza, was at home with his cousin Raul when Chavez, along with his 2 accomplices, rammed their way into his house to rob it. They shot the place up, blinding Raul. Chavez, however, shot Vicente dead.
You do remember these cases. I remember his history started so young as far as killing someone. I think he was 17 when he killed his first, I think it was his neighbor. So when you start off with killing your neighbor, there's not a whole lot else you need to research as far as how bad this guy is.
Chavez was sentenced to 15 years for the murder of Vicente Mendoza, but his incarceration did little to stem his violence. A few months into his jail term, he joined a notorious prison gang called the Texas Syndicate. Rather than rehabilitate him, his time in prison became nothing more than an apprenticeship in ruthless violence.
Imprisoning him didn't seem to impress him too much. He flaunted the rules. He wasn't too concerned about losing privileges in prison. because he kept violating to the point of assaulting guards and other inmates.
By 1994, Chavez clocked up to 40 violations. Despite his long list of prison violations, and just 7 years into his sentence, Chavez was released on mandatory parole in March 1994.
Back in those days, I remember specifically we had up on our wall in our workroom that each year of imprisonment ended up being really like several months. So it was really kind of a joke that the jails were so overcrowded at that point for whatever reason. I don't know if they not built enough jails or just incarcerating people at record rates. For whatever reason, when I got down to these heinous criminals, they were not staying in prison nearly. It was a fraction of the time that they were sentenced to, and it was a real problem. For us, all we could do was sentence them to as many years as we could put them in for. But we knew, we tell the victims' families, they said, look, if he gets 15 years, he's going to be out in half of that.
Families were right to be worried. Chavez, then 27, had befriended 15-year-old car thief Hector Crazy Fernandez. On the night of March 22, 1995, they spotted some impressive rims on the wheels of a car being washed by 23-year-old Jose Castillo at the Oak Cliff self-service car wash. Chavez shot Castillo dead, stole his keys, yet left his car. Chavez had been on parole for less than a year. 2 months later, while cruising around West Davis, he spotted 18-year-old Juan Pablo Hernandez in the car park at La Favorita Food Market. He shot him dead before he stole his car, stripped it, and then burnt it. It was a precursor to his brazen bloodlust that would spill over so catastrophically during the night of July 1st, 1995. Chavez and Fernandez began their crime spree by breaking into the Greyhound bus depot and stealing a car. Their next destination was Northwest Dallas. 40-year-old Jose Morales was using a payphone when Chavez pulled up beside him in a stolen car and asked him a question. Chavez stepped out of the car and shot him in the chest. With Morales bleeding on the ground, Chavez rummaged for his wallet, then shot him again. He made off with $2 and some credit cards, which he threw away. Chavez and Fernandez drove into a construction site where 41-year-old Susan Ferguson was on duty as a security guard. Once again, Chavez drove up alongside to ask her a question.
I do remember the young lady that was a security guard being especially tragic. The co-defendant, he had a 15, or I think it was a juvenile, I forget exactly how old he was, 15 I believe, with him, and he testified and was able to give some specifics that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I do remember her case in particular because it seemed so cruel that he pulls up to this construction site. She comes up, according to the 15-year-old, leans in his car window. He waves her over and says, "Hey, how can I help you?" I mean, she's being just completely nice and, "Can I help you find something? Can I help you in any way?" And he's, playing along and real nice to her. And, she kind of gets very close to the car window, and that's when he pulls the gun right in her face. She immediately starts crying and, bawling. And he just ended up shooting her in the face. And then that's, he ran over her head as well. So when you hear that, you're like, what kind of person could ever do that?
Chavez and his teenage protege sped across to West Oak Cliff's Indian Ridge Apartments, where they shot another security guard, Kevin Hancock, twice in the neck, leaving him permanently paralyzed. Minutes later, they drove past friends Francisco Jaime and Alberto Guevara, and passerby Jesus Braceno, shooting them, robbing them, and leaving 25-year-old Braceno dead. Alfonso Contreras and Guadalupe Delgadillo Peña would be the next victims. The couple were sitting in their pickup truck. Chavez approached and fired at them, killing Alfonso and wounding Guadalupe. Undeterred by two bleeding bodies in the cab, Chavez climbed into the truck. Speeding away with Fernandez following, Chavez pushed Alfonso's body out of the moving vehicle before coming back to drive over his body. At Trinity River, Chavez instructed his 15-year-old cohort to shoot the injured Guadalupe in the head, which he did. Chavez then drove over her body.
Many times he would trick them. He would befriend them. Several of the instances on his big night of 5 murders, he would go up to the individual, very pleasant, smiling, would engage them to get close to him, and then he would, typically shoot them in the face. And then with several of them, he would take his car and run over their heads like a watermelon and pop them. I mean, it makes no sense.
2 days later, on July 4th, Chavez struck again. 31-year-old Manuel Duran and 27-year-old Antonio Rios, both employees at a tire store, were gunned down by Chavez for apparently blocking his way. 53-year-old Antonio Banda was just a passerby who Chavez decided to shoot dead as well. 2 weeks later, in the very early hours of July 22nd, Chavez left 17-year-old Gabriel Urena for dead on South Randolph after shooting him in the head and driving off in his car. Chavez was finally arrested the following month. In spite of all the witnesses to his crimes, Chavez denied the charges leveled at him and remained remorseless.
When we pick a death penalty jury, at least here in Dallas, it might take weeks upon weeks, because we take each individual prospective juror, put them on the witness stand after they've filled out a 50-page questionnaire, and we go through a lot of questions for hours. And that whole time, the defendant is in the courtroom so he can be part of it. So, I remember looking at him and thinking that he always pretty much had a smirk quite often. I think he was enjoying the process. As I recall, he kept his smirk. I mean, he, pretty much knew it was coming with the mountain of evidence that we had. And maybe mountain is an understatement. There was so much evidence on this guy, it was unbelievable. But, he knew it was coming, and he seemed to enjoy the process the whole way. I believe he had told some bailiffs during the trial that he was going to intentionally smirk to irritate victims' family members. So that tells you the level. He just enjoyed getting at people, whether they killed them or just, made them mad.
There was no question about the unusually vicious nature of Chavez's murders, but his motives were more difficult to explain.
Chavez had no reason or pattern to his killings, and sometimes he would take a few dollars from the victim's wallet after he'd kill him. Sometimes he wouldn't. And so he was that's why we called him the thrill killer, because we really looked at all of his cases, and it seemed to us that it was just the thrill of the kill that motivated him. So there wasn't any other particular factor. It wasn't a race thing. It wasn't male or female. It wasn't any kind of particular victim he had. It's just whoever was an opportunity, whoever he got close to, and sometimes he didn't take anything. I always would tell my non-prosecutor friends, real world friends, don't try to understand it. You're not going to. I mean, you're talking about a different kind of individual that has no conscience. And people make the assumption, and they say, well, what would I have done? Well, why would I have done this? Or you can't do that, because that's like saying, what would a bear have done in that situation? I mean, it's just a whole different creature that reacts like that. You would just be guessing on what his motivation. I mean, you might think, okay, after the first couple of killings, maybe, it's all gravy from there on, and he's just having fun until his luck runs out. Who knows? Did he really think he was going to continue to get away with it all these times? I mean, I think that we'll never know. The only thing we did know was that guy needed to be off our streets.
Chavez was found guilty of first-degree murder and robbery, and on March 27, 1996, he was sentenced to death.
My job is to protect society. And the only way, in his case, to protect society, you put him back in jail where we knew how he acted there and how he assaulted other prisoners, he assaulted guards. To put him back in prison to be a constant threat to the jail guards or other inmates would have been a disservice to society. For the guy to, smirk through the whole trial and the killings and to kill people in that manner, there was no redeeming quality that I was able to ascertain at all.
Chavez was executed on the 22nd of April 2003 by lethal injection in Huntsville, Walker County.
No one ever wins in these cases. No one ever wins. The victims, they've lost a mother, they've lost a daughter, they've lost a husband, they lost a son. There's no win. They are hurt. That hurt's going to be there for years. I, have stayed in touch with many of the victims throughout the years, and it's been decades. And to their heart, the case might have happened yesterday. They still have that same pain every day. You're very protective. I know all parents are protective of their kids, but when you are, face to face with the reality of evil people and predators out there, you make darn sure that your kids are away from that.
Perhaps the scariest thing about serial killers is how they blend in amongst us. They can often be magnetic and charismatic. Serial killer Rodney Alcala charmed his way to a bachelorette's heart on an episode of The Dating Game in 1978.
And welcome to The Dating Game, and we'll get right underway. It's time to meet our first 3 eligible bachelors for game number 1, and here they are. Good luck, gentlemen. Well, let's see. Bachelor number 1 is a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the dark room at the age of 13, fully developed. Between takes, he might find him skydiving or motorcycling. Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Rod, welcome.
He was so weird, so creepy, that I not only didn't like him, but I was creeped out by him. In fact, I've been in tons of green rooms, backstage doing TV shows or whatever. And he's the only person I ever remembered.
Rodney Alcala lived with his mother and siblings in Mexico and suburban Los Angeles as a child after his father abandoned them. At the age of 17, he joined the Army as a clerk. After only a few years in the Army, Alcala had a nervous breakdown and received a medical discharge after being diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder by an Army psychiatrist. After leaving the Army, Alcala studied and graduated from the UCLA School of Fine Arts and later studied film under Roman Polanski. Alcala had a fascination with photography, which would later feed his sick desires.
He was a photographer, or so he claimed. I think he just used his photography to meet girls so that he could take advantage of them.
Alcala took thousands of sexually explicit photographs of women and stored them in his private collection. The photographs were of women who were his victims, women who are missing, and women whose identities may never be discovered. In 1968, 8-year-old Tali Shapiro was on her way to school. Alcala lured Tali into his car and drove her back to his apartment. A witness spotted them and called police. By the time police arrived at Alcala's apartment, he had bludgeoned and strangled Tali with a steel rod and raped her. Somehow, Tali survived, although she was badly injured. Alcala escaped out the back door and evaded arrest. He was placed on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Alcala had developed a lust for rape, torture, and murder. He fled to New York and enrolled at NYU. In 1971, Alcala raped 23-year-old Trans World Airlines flight attendant Cornelia Crilly in her Manhattan apartment and then strangled her with her own nylon stockings. Alcala began working as a camp counselor, teaching drama in New Hampshire. In 1971, 2 children at the camp recognized Alcala from an FBI Most Wanted poster and reported it to police. Alcala was extradited to California. Tali Shapiro's family did not allow their daughter to testify. Alcala pleaded guilty to a lesser assault charge and received an indeterminate sentence. After 34 months in prison, the custodial system believed that Alcala was rehabilitated and he was free again. Alcala had not been fixed. Shortly after being released from prison, he kidnapped 13-year-old Julie J. He forced her to smoke marijuana and molested her. He was convicted of providing a minor with marijuana and violating his parole. He again received an indeterminate sentence. 2 years later, Alcala was free to roam again.
I'm a drama teacher, and I'm going to audition each of you for my private class. Bachelor number 1.
You're a dirty old man.
Take it.
Oh, come on, over here.
In 1977, Alcala traveled to visit relatives in New York. Shortly after arriving, he killed 23-year-old socialite Ellen Jane Hover. Her datebook had an entry for a meeting with John Berger, an alias used by Alcala. Alcala returned to L.A. and got a job working as a typesetter with the L.A. Times. The FBI connected him to his alias and questioned him about the murder. Alcala admitted knowing Ellen Jane, but denied killing her. The police had nothing else to go on, and he was let go.
Bachelor number 1, I am serving you for dinner.
Oh.
What are you called, and what do you look like?
I'm called the banana, and I look really good.
Can you be a little more descriptive?
Peel me.
Later, Bachelor 1, later.
Jill Barkham grew up on Park Avenue with her parents, 5 sisters and 5 brothers. She had a bit of a wild side and left high school to move to California on her own. In 1977, after being there only 3 weeks, her path would cross with Rodney Alcala. Alcala raped, sodomized, and bit Jill before strangling her 3 times with her belt and a pair of blue pants. Shortly after the murder of Jill Barkham, 27-year-old Georgia Wickstead was found dead on the floor in her Malibu studio apartment. Alcala had raped, sodomized, tortured her, and strangled her with her own nylon stockings before fatally bludgeoning her with a hammer. Just 1 year later, despite his record as a twice-convicted sex offender and having brutally murdered at least 4 women, Alcala appeared as Bachelor number 1 on The Dating Game. Bachelor number 2, Jed Mills, remembers him clearly.
The reason why he was able to be on the show, even though he was a serial killer, is they did no background checking in those days. Obviously, they didn't have the internet and anything like that. So you just spy. If they like your personality, they'll put you on the show.
Bachelor number 2.
Rodney Alcala was Bachelor number 1. When you first meet the guy, he's a nice-looking guy. He was quiet, you know, it was kind of like, didn't want to be bothered. Maybe, you know, you're getting into his space type of a guy, which I didn't care about, didn't bother me. I went to the other guy. The other guy was very nice, we got along well, but every now and then, the Alcala guy would interfere in a conversation. And, no, you're wrong. Yeah, that's not right. That's not it. You're wrong. And he'd walk away. I did that several times, you know, it started to get annoying. I didn't like him. He didn't like him. And then every now and then he had this big smile on his face like he was your friend. It was a phony smile. I'm also an acting teacher, and I was an acting teacher back then. And you can really discern what's going on in people's heads based on so much that's going on in their eyes, you know. So I know this guy was a phony. I didn't like him. Something was said that, you know, I did not interpret it as, what are you guys doing here? You guys might as well leave. You know, you're not going to win. I always get my girl. That's what he said. And that was, and I said, yeah, go fuck yourself. I told him to fuck off, in fact. I didn't know he was a serial killer. But he said, I always get my girl. But that was telling. When you think about it, he always gets his girl and kills them.
Will that date be Bachelor number 1, Bachelor number 2, or Bachelor number 3? Who gets the dates?
Well, I like bananas, so I'll take 1.
Number 1, Bachelor number 1, all right. Say hello to Rodney Alcala. Rodney, come on and say hello. Congratulations, Rod, you did it with a 1 answer.
By the way, he won the date, but she didn't go on a date with him. She thought he was too creepy, and she was right.
Though Jed Mills came to learn of Alcala's terrible crimes, he didn't know he was sitting next to a serial killer who had already committed 4 murders.
Here's this guy sitting next to me doing a show and smiling and being Mr. Cool, right? And he's already killed 4 people, you say? I didn't know that. I thought he had just been arrested for killing that one girl. Well, not quite killing her, 10-year-old, and then he killed 1 other person. I didn't know he killed 4 people before he did the show. How could you kill 4 women and get on a show and sit there? You have to have no conscience whatsoever, no remorse, and think it's a good thing to do. It's a very selfish thing to do. Really, the ultimate selfishness. He's an animal. He's not a person. He's not a human being.
The bachelorette Cheryl from the dating game thought Alcala too creepy to go out with, and may have saved herself from becoming his next victim. But Alcala's thirst for murder and torture persisted. In 1978, 32-year-old legal secretary Charlotte Lamb was found in the laundry room of an apartment complex. She'd been raped, beaten, and strangled with a shoelace. In 1979, 15-year-old Monique H. was abducted by Alcala. He raped and beat her, but she escaped with her life. Later that same year, Alcala broke into the home of 21-year-old Jill Parenteau, a computer program key punch operator. He raped her, beat her, and strangled her with a cord or stocking. In June 1979, Alcala was at the beach and tried to convince 12-year-old Robin Samso and her friend just to take photographs of them in swimsuits. The following day, Robin was riding a borrowed bicycle from her neighborhood in Huntington Beach to ballet practice. She never made it there. 12 days later, her body was discovered off Santa Anita Canyon Road. Alcala had abducted her, beaten her, raped her, and stabbed her with a knife. The rape and murder of young Robin Samso would finally bring an end to Alcala's reign of terror. Robin Samso's young friend provided a description of the man who had wanted to take their photograph. Detectives circulated a sketch of the man, and Alcala's parole officer recognized him. Just a few days later, Alcala was arrested for Samso's murder. On searching Alcala's mother's house, police were led to a storage locker in Seattle, which contained his photo collection. It also contained earrings belonging to Robin Samso and Charlotte Lamb. Alcala's path through the criminal justice system would not be simple, and the families of victims would be painfully dragged through multiple trials. In 1980, Alcala was found guilty of Robin Samso's murder and was sentenced to death. That decision was twice overturned, once because the jury had been informed of Alcala's previous convictions before the trial, and a second time on the basis that a witness had been hypnotized. Justice for Robin Samso was delayed for decades. While the wheels of the justice system slowly turned, DNA evidence connected Alcala to other victims. In 2010, Alcala was tried for 5 murders. He was found guilty of the murders of Robin Samso, Jill Barkham, Georgia Wickstead, Charlotte Lamb, and Jill Parenteau. Alcala was sentenced to death and presently resides on death row in San Quentin Prison. In 2011, he was indicted for the murders of Cornelia Crilly and Ellen Hover in New York. He pled guilty to both and received another life sentence.
It's kind of sad. He killed innocent women and girls. That's how he got his his girl by getting them and killing them, and in a violent way. He would strangle them and bludgeon them. How do I feel? How did I feel when I found that out? And he said, oh, how do I feel now? I'm flabbergasted. I'm angry. I don't think you'll ever get rid of that, because you see it happening all the time. And he's something that came into my life. He actually came into my life. He's given me a fear for my children. That fear that doesn't go away. I mean, I don't walk around with my head in my hands saying, oh my God, you know, like that. But whenever I'm with my daughter and I look at my beautiful daughter and how much I love her, or my other daughter, there's always that fear that they're going to come in contact with a creep like this and get raped, strangled, killed, murdered, mutilated, you know. So in that way, it has instilled a fear in me.
110 of Alcala's original photos remain posted online, and police continue to seek help from the public to identify the women photographed. A further 900 sexually explicit photos taken by Alcala are still held by police, but have not been released. At least 21 women have approached police after recognizing themselves in the photos, and 6 families have recognized a lost family member. Some claim that some of the women in the photos are unknown victims of Alcala's. Christine Thornton's body was found in Wyoming in 1982, 5 years after she disappeared. Decades later, one of her relatives recognized her in one of Alcala's photos. This led to Alcala being charged with her murder in September 2016. We may never find all of Alcala's victims, but the disturbing photos he took may offer some hope for families to close a chapter on the search for their loved ones, and for law enforcement to reach a conclusion on the violent life of Rodney Alcala.
I hope he's suffering. He should suffer for as long as he can for what he's done, and that's still not going to bring anybody back.